Harry and Meghan touchdown in the UK.
It was so quick. It was enormous to absorb that information.
He left that airport in a car,
Yes.
No police in front, no police behind, in fact, no police anywhere. But how did they manage to avoid the cameras again?
It's actually quite incredible.
Meghan's now been in this country twice and no one's seen her.
Everyone was trying to see when they were going to arrive. All eyes were on them.
And what's the latest on Meghan's big Netflix role? We get an update from the journalist who broke the story.
Imagine her doing a British accent.
That would be really interesting.
Give the people what they want. We want to hear it.
Hey, and welcome to a special extra episode of Talking Royals. Charlene and Lizzie still on their holidays, lucky them, but I'm here and delighted to be joined by royal journalist Bronte Coy. Bronte, welcome. You're not on holiday, I'm not on holidays. And there's apparently quite a lot to chat about.
Yes, and you're not bitter about it, crucially, I think.
No.
I did enjoy all the backdrops of Greece, though.
Yeah, I was on holiday when people like you and some other publications decided to run a story which went something along the lines of Harry and Meghan are moving back to the UK.
Well, you heard about that in
Suddenly
Greece.
the internet broke.
Yes, it was. Even when I first heard it, I think my brain nearly exploded.
Yeah.
It genuinely, 6 years on from Megxit, is actually still quite staggering to believe.
Yeah, I mean, I did some interviews from my Greek holiday apartment, and somebody referred, one of the first interviews, that's the point at which it's sort of sunk into me, they referred to it as reverse Megxit.
Well, there was some really good ones floating around. I think Regrexit was one of them as well, I heard, which I didn't mind. Meg's in, I think people, when they first heard the news after that initial shock, it was then quickly figure out the best possible way to refer to this moving forward. I think we haven't landed on the perfect one yet, but there's been some great work out there.
So Harry's back, Meg's in, but no, nevertheless, I mean, actually, as we speak right now, they're back in the UK.
That's it.
I mean, so actually, a week between we're coming back, suddenly they're here with their kids about to start school. I mean, this has been a wild little ride.
Well, this is
over
it.
7 days.
This is part of what that huge shock was. It was firstly, bang, Harry and Meghan are moving back to the UK. It was enormous to absorb that information. Immediately afterwards, kids are enrolled in school already.
Right.
Then it was, they'll be back within a matter of days.
Yeah.
It was so quick. In fact, this was our reaction. Given that the King had only found out a few days earlier himself, you can only imagine he and the rest of the royal family had a similar sort of bang, bang, bang. It's happening.
Right. What? I mean, I imagine that, it's got to be the case that Harry, when he met with Queen Camilla and Meghan at Highgrove during their July visit, surely, and actually, to be fair to all sides, nothing of that meeting is leaked, and that's how it should be. As much as we all wanted to be a fly on the wall and listening to every single word, but nothing is leaked from that. But surely he would have said, hey, Dad, we've got this plan, because we know it's been going on for a few months. Harry and Meghan will be discussing it. There wasn't one thing that led to them coming back to the UK, but a combination, wasn't it? So there's, do we want the kids to continue to go to school in America? Actually, probably not. Do our kids have any connection with the UK, which is where their grandfather is king? Not really. Could they go to British schools? Yes. Do I have a job? We'll come to Meghan's job. That's come up as well. Dad's, health. Okay, it's plateaued, but he's still having cancer treatment. All of these things must have gone into the pot over the last few months, and suddenly, I think it's been referred to me, the stars aligned, and boom, 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 everything then just falls into place.
That's exactly how it was put to me as well, and it is. You're exactly right about that meeting a month ago. It just sort of beggars belief that this hadn't come up if it was in their mind. But from all sides, as you say, we've not heard differently. Apparently, the King was informed formally about this decision only a few days before the world was. And
that's because their school places weren't confirmed until like the Friday. The King was told on Sunday, so like 2 days after they got the school sorted. And there's another question, like which school's going to say, oh yeah, you're fifth in line to the throne and your kids are 6th and 7th. We don't have any spaces. Sorry, we're full up.
That was exactly, there's so much to unpack here. But that was one of my first thoughts as well. I think it was described as the great leveller, the waiting for school placements. Yeah. But how can it be a leveller with the 6th and 7th in line to the throne and discussing their placements? Apparently that was the case, though. But I think there's, the idea of the King being blindsided, I think this is a very interesting one. A lot of outlets ran with that. But my understanding of this is that Harry has had this as an idea, as actually, I had this. I moved my family overseas after toying with the idea a few years back. But he apparently had a concept of this happening for the reasons you've stated for some time, but I think it's
no single reason, is there?
Yes, no single reason and no perfect time until now. So as you say, with the stars aligning. So it seems like possibly the king had heard him talk about his great desire for all these reasons at some point down the line to be here. And maybe it wasn't such an enormous shock, but I think they had to wait because they are, very, very keen on keeping their privacy as they are moving here as private citizens, despite everyone panicking they were coming back into the royal fold as working royals. But because they're coming back in that capacity, I think that they had to keep the lid on it as long as they could in terms of not, and more broadly, letting more people know, the palace staff, etc., only because I think that there was, before it was all locked in, you obviously are running the risk of it being leaked.
You say private citizen, isn't Harry's argument that he's not a private citizen? Because this is why we'll get on to security. And as you say, there's so much to unpack. I know. What do we talk about first?
I'm excited.
He's not a private citizen, which is why, because he's fifth in line to the throne, because he's son of the king, because he fought in Afghanistan for the British Army, because he's had death threats from the Taliban, that's why he's saying to the Security Committee, those who know the story know it's called RAVEC, but basically a Home Office committee that decides who gets what security. This is what he's saying to them. I'm just not an ordinary geezer coming back to the UK. This is different. I am a public figure. I'm just not rejoining the royal family as a working royal.
Exactly. And I'm glad you framed it that way. I mean, the private citizen I use just in terms of him not doing official duties.
Yeah.
But you're exactly right. And this is something that I think has been lost a little bit in the conversation this week. And, people come at you because I know that the security conversation involves taxpayers if he gets, the close protection officers. And I understand that is then a very reasonable debate. And people get quite, fiery on either side. But exactly as you're pointing out, I do feel like they are separate issues that need to be kept separate, which is it's not the way he's positioning it is that it's not a perk of the job of being a working royal to have the level of protection that he and other senior royals would have. He's saying, as you well know, because of the role he was born into, that he didn't opt into, that he can't opt out of, he's the king's son no matter what happens. That's where he feels that he should have that, instead of it being seen as, you've got this job and here's the package involved with it. And I really can empathise with that side of it. Rightly or wrongly, that he does a lot of the things he's done regarding security is driven by a genuine fear that he feels for whatever, as I say, rightly or wrongly, it's a broad debate. Obviously, it's got people fired up.
We ran a story a few weeks ago, which was the security report that was actually prepared by his team. So you can say, okay, is it biased? But it did have those lists of, like, the FBI said there was some chatter on an Al-Qaeda group saying that Harry should, be a target. He has had death threats previously. That something like, 5 of the 6 terrorist threats emanated in the UK, not elsewhere. This is why, and now he's resident in the UK. So, but as we know, when he arrived at Birmingham Airport shortly before midday on Wednesday, he left that airport in a car. Yes. No police in front, no police behind. In fact, no police anywhere.
So it doesn't appear there's been an update. I know you've been following this closely, and I saw that piece you had with the report about the specific threats. It was fascinating. Of course, yes, as you say, it's from their side. I think more broadly, I think there is as well I understand the argument that he's brought some of it, he could have brought some potential threat onto himself in recent years with, discussing the Taliban killings in his book and, with some of the revelations he's made, since leaving the country. I understand that, but I think as well it goes back to the main point, which is he's still the king's son and he's still that public figure. And I can understand that. But as you pointed out, from landing yesterday, it doesn't appear there's been a change in his security status, which is curious in itself. But we know that risk assessment happened, right, at the end of last month.
We know that he's had what's called an RMB, is that Risk Management Board, which is basically a review. But, as far as we know, nothing's changed. In other words, all he had when he came over in July was the phone number of a police liaison officer, and that hasn't changed. So despite now living in the UK with his family, he's got this number that he can call, which, you might think if there is a threat going on, a mobile phone number of somebody...
Quite a long number, a lot of digits.
At a police control centre in London or wherever, it's not the most speedy way to get some kind of help.
Yeah, I think this has been a really interesting part of the move, because this is a question that was asked immediately is, well, does he have new information on what his security will be? As recently as last year, he said he didn't want to bring his family here because he didn't feel safe. And even we saw all the back and forth are the kids and Meghan coming on the visit last month? That was initially because of the security issues. So I don't know where this is all going to land. But I believe it's all going to have to be reviewed again now because he is here living here permanently, and I believe it was all done before under the filter of him visiting on visits on a semi-regular basis. So look, as you say, there's a lot in it. I think this one is something that people are watching very carefully, obviously because of the taxpayer element, and there's been a lot of debate.
And it is the taxpayers element, I think, that it is the problem here, because to play devil's advocate, I mean, there would be a whole bunch of people who will say, you left for the royal family, you said you wanted more privacy, and now you're coming back and you're whining that you want some public funded security and taxpayers to shell out for your security. And as you say, I think from Harry's point of view is, well, yeah, okay, I'm not rejoining the royal family, but I didn't ask for this public role. I was born into it, and I'm still the fifth in line to the throne, and my children, Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet, are also in the line to the throne, and therefore that is an issue. Let's then talk about, we mentioned security in Birmingham Airport. How come nobody saw them? I mean,
I know.
How come nobody saw them arrive at Birmingham Airport?
Private
jet, fine, but clearly somebody tipped off a news organisation to say, oh, actually, I've just seen a bit of movement at Birmingham Airport, and that will lend us to perhaps this is why they are perhaps living in the Cotswolds again. Nothing's been confirmed on the home front. How come they did it again without being? Meghan's now been in this country twice and no one's seen her.
It's actually incredible because everyone in the country was trying to see when they were going to arrive. All eyes were on them. I mean,
Everyone has a mobile phone, even if you're not a member of the press.
Yeah, so all eyes were on the airports. It's actually quite incredible. And it could signal things to come, which is maybe they are. This is the whole thing. We don't know what this is going to look like, this new Sussex in the UK era, but maybe they are going to manage to slip around relatively unnoticed. I think that most people had assumed, certainly I thought they would be here at the end of this week. Yeah. So yesterday felt a day or so earlier than I had anticipated.
It kind of slipped in a day early. Yeah.
So I think maybe that
helps when you've got a private jet, because you're not stuck into your British Airways schedule. And I don't think there is a direct flight in any case from Los Angeles to Birmingham.
So that's the reason, is it? They thought, well, we're going to have to go private. We have to. Oh, gosh.
A private jet.
Those kids are lucky, I tell you.
It's a long flight, but also, 8 hours time delay as well. So if they are enrolled in schools, in fact, we know they're enrolled in schools, and English schools at least start back on the 1st of September after the summer break. That means you've got to get over your 8-hour jet lag before you go to school, presumably on the 1st or 2nd of September.
Well, that's it. I think that was part of them pulling the trigger so quickly on this. They apparently got the school enrolment. They thought we need to get there ASAP because, exactly as you say, they need to get everyone settled. It's a big adjustment. I did think they've woken up today. I'm really happy there's rain. As a quick sidebar, the Commons are all looking very grim, but they would have woken up today to their first day here. Absolutely pouring, grey outside. Welcome.
You've just had 3 months of wall-to-wall sunshine, and you turn up in the UK on the day it rains.
I know, that's what I honestly had that thought this morning.
The kids are probably going, Mummy, what's this stuff in the sky?
And we're staying here? This is it? It's, you know what, you know that you're a little bit too on the job when you're literally the first thought when you wake up and see the weather is, Harry and Meghan are going to be waking up to this. What are they going to think?
Yeah, thinking, have we made the right decision? Actually, should we reverse Megxit and go back to California next week?
That you know what, Chris, at any point now, anything can happen.
Anything can happen, yeah. That's entirely possible. Let's talk about, among the many, many, many reasons that we just listed that they might have decided to come here, is the issue of work. Not Harry's work, because he's still going to be doing his Well Child and Invictus. In fact, he already had quite a few events planned for September, and we all thought he was just going to pop back from California to do those. They're still in place. They're still happening. But actually, the other factor in all this, and you broke the story, is that Meghan is coming back here because she's got more Netflix work. Yes. And not to cook in someone else's kitchen. It is to act.
Yes, to act. And that, I mean, yes, a lot to answer in that. To begin with, I think you said this at the top of the show, but for me, when I heard they were moving back, one of the reasons I was so flabbergasted, for want of a better word, is because what was Meghan going to do? But it was because genuinely I thought, well, as you said, the Harry stuff is very obvious. He himself has said how much he wants to spend time here. He has connections, Scotty's Little Soldiers, Invictus in Birmingham in 12 months. This is perfect timing for him to be based here for everything leading up to that. Yeah. But also, of course, Well Child. So his schedule, if anything, it makes a lot more sense him being based here for the work that he's doing. But immediately I just thought, Meghan never loved it here. She never had any great connection, and really she wasn't here that long.
A bit mildly, not that she never loved it. She hated it here.
Well, yes, but I mean, even in the initial part, when it would have been a little bit more exciting before it all turned a bit different. But that was what, to me, the big shock. And so when I heard this, so I'd heard rumours of this for a while, but also she did this cameo role at the end of last year in a Brie Larson, Lily Collins movie, which hasn't come out yet. But that was a cameo as herself. So it's acting, but a soft launch into acting. Right. Now, with the benefit of hindsight, this all makes sense. It's now what I understand of it is that was sort of dipping her toe back in. She loved it. It makes sense because, let's be honest, a lot of the other things she's done behind the camera haven't really taken off and they haven't provided a long-term entertainment career in that way. With Love Meghan isn't going on. And so
there were 2 series of that, though, weren't there, Luke?
There were 2 series. We know
Netflix hasn't commissioned a third.
Yeah, they haven't commissioned a third. There was a holiday special, but that's right. Sort of over. So this made
we've got Netflix. We think it's still Netflix. She's an actor and previously best known for her role in Suits, which apparently did very well when it went on to Netflix. And they've obviously seen, well, with your fame, your notoriety, we put you in any role, be a major part or a minor part, people are going to be talking about it. And what do Netflix want? They want people to talk about their shows.
That is actually, I'm so glad you just said that because actually I hadn't thought of it. But one of the big arguments that people have said when they heard this news, and I'll go back to how we sort of uncovered all the drama that played out with this story over the weekend. But you've raised such a good point, which is we only could gauge audience reactions to her based on pre-Harry, because that's when she obviously left Suits, when she became an official member of the royal family. But as you said, that was dropped onto Netflix. It was a couple of years ago. I rewatched it. It ended up breaking Netflix records, I believe, which is interesting because this isn't now in that post-Megxit era where people, she is so divisive, and that is an excellent gauge for any studio or streaming service to sort of get an idea of just how many eyes they can get.
I don't think Netflix mind divisiveness in anything. They welcome it because actually, it's controversial. Meghan's in this. Why have you put her in it? You shouldn't put her in it. She did Meghan. And then you're talking about the show. Netflix don't care at all. They think you're talking about the show, which we'll come on to in a minute.
Yes.
The issue of because apparently there was a report, there was a backlash. I mean, I don't believe that either. And if there was, I think Netflix is quite happy. Great. Let's, there's nothing worse than not being talked about.
Well, exactly.
And no one watching.
I mean, the proof's in the pudding here. Netflix announced they greenlit season 3 in the middle of the next working day after the backlash. Yeah. Season 3 was announced, which is genius.
So season 3 we haven't actually.
So let's get into it. So let's go right back. So initially, I've heard the rumors about her wanting to return to acting. I then had it on pretty good authority that I had heard it was The Gentleman, but I didn't talk about that initially. I knew it was a UK production that she had been very excited about. And as we've said at the beginning, for her and Harry and the family, it made the timing make sense. It was something she would be doing here in England.
So filming something in the UK.
Yes, that's what we heard. Yes. So with Netflix, big show. Then we found out Deadline, I think, as well reported the next day. It's Guy Ritchie's show, The Gentleman. Quick recap, that's based on his hit movie from 2019 in the same universe. Season 1 was a massive hit. Season 2 launches, I think, next week. Incredible timing.
So The Gentleman stars Theo James, and it's about growing some special plants in the back of your mansion.
Yes, I've actually not seen the series. Apparently he unexpectedly inherits this estate and the dukedom, and then unwittingly becomes a drug lord.
Yeah.
There we go. Enter Meghan somewhere in this story, apparently. I'm not sure where.
What role is she? Is she going to be an English person? Is she going to play an American?
Imagine her doing a British accent.
That would be really interesting. Could Meghan do a British accent? Well, she lived with Harry for sort of 7 or 8 years.
That would be very interesting.
Could she do a British accent?
That's what we want to see.
That's a real test of Meghan's acting skills.
Give the people what they want. We want to hear it. As of this morning, I've gone back to everyone I've spoken to about this story along the way. It is exactly as it was last week. The conversations are ongoing. Meghan, at this point, is going to be in The Gentleman, but when she's on screen, we can believe it 100%.
Of course, we need to see her on the screen or some photographs of her filming. But as I understand it, if it has been cancelled, then no one's actually told Meghan yet. So,
that's it.
So therefore,
and they've had days now.
I mean, whilst it wasn't it sped up their decision making, but it wasn't the reason for the relocation. It wasn't the sole reason for the.
Oh yes, it's not like they're not going to not come. That was, I think, it'd be hugely disappointing. But yes.
Let's talk about what they're going to do now. So, so if they've only got this privacy thing, and I'm sure they'll go back to the Ravek committee and keep arguing about their security. But what's going to happen when the House, I'm sure at some point, Cotswolds or not, is going to be identified. The school at some point is going to be identified. There are parents in the school. There'll be WhatsApp groups. Meghan will probably be on a WhatsApp group, and we all know how tedious that they can be. Actually, it's worked quite well for William and Kate at their kids' school. The parents don't sort of share any of Kate's messages. How are they going to navigate the privacy going forward? I think it's very different, of course, to William and Kate. Like, we're very likely to see a first day at school picture of Prince George, when he goes to Eton, because that's what they've done before, and that's the part of the deal, that you get this picture and then you leave them or him alone, and that's worked at the kids' previous school. But how on earth are Harry and Meghan going to do it? Because you don't have that formal structure in place. Exactly. We're in the royal family. Here's a picture. Now go away. And they've worked really, really hard to keep their kids' identity secret. They never post any faces. They would do back of heads or side of heads. We've got an idea of what they might look like. But I'm sure as Charlene always says on this show, if you were to pass Archie and Lilibet in the street, you probably wouldn't recognise them. And that's the test, isn't it? So what on earth are Harry and Meghan going to do about house and school?
As you say, there is that formal structure around the way that William and Catherine do it. And I think it's amazing, for the future king and his heir, and the way that they've created a sort of a private and public life for their family in a way that suits them is amazing. But exactly right, this is not a structure that exists around Harry and Meghan. And further to that, they don't have the goodwill of the public at the moment. They don't. I think a lot of the protection around William and Catherine with the schooling, for example, we hear that Catherine does the school. She's at the school events. They both go as often as they can, but she's there. At the sports days, and we never see anything
on the football pitch.
Yes,
she's like,
and as you say, she'd be in the group chats.
If your kids are going to be in a school, with quote unquote normal people, they have this problem of trying to protect their kids' security.
That's exactly right. And I do think we are in such uncharted royal waters with Harry and Meghan, because there aren't two other figures we can really compare this modern day royal situation to. But I think that, again, the way that the Waleses have managed to do it is because the school is very protective of having them in the fold. And we have, exactly as we've said, we never see or hear any details about their school life involvement.
As it should be.
Exactly as it should be.
We're not even debating this. It should,
no, absolutely.
Kids should be able to go to school without having cameras in their faces.
I think it's brilliant. I think the way that it's been, again, for someone for such a high profile family, but for, George in particular, who's going to be the future king. So all that to say, I don't know how that looks for Harry and Meghan. Hopefully it's the same, because as we say, all children have the right to privacy. And I very much hope that those two kids who have no involvement in any other noise or anything else that's happening, they deserve that as well. They're young, 5 and 7, they're little kids. But I don't know, because you are relying on the broader public, I guess, goodwill and sense of decency with that.
Okay, we've done the big things: school, security. We've done job. There is the question of, do you have a welcome home party from the family? Do you get an invite to Windsor to say, "Oh, you're back, come round and let's catch up"?
What's that guest list, Chris?
Of course not, because obviously Harry, sadly, we all often joke about it, but it's actually very sad, isn't it, that William and Harry don't have a relationship at all. Nevertheless, the king has been at Balmoral for the summer. Harry and Meghan have got a lot to sort out before their kids go to school next week. I don't think they'll be necessarily jumping up to Balmoral for the weekend.
It's an interesting one. I think that we've heard the king's delighted by the return, and you can imagine that's true. He, from all accounts, he and Harry have quite a good relationship. They speak on the phone a lot in the lead up to all of this.
And building that relationship with your grandchildren that you've not been able to build because of geographical distance.
Crucially, and I can see that will be a huge factor. I can see that there would be. And I think this is the smartest way to go about it too. Just speaking personally and looking at it objectively, them swinging in and trying to, and even if they wanted to shoehorn some sort of big reunion with William and Kate after everything that's happened, isn't going to go down well with anyone, least of which the Waleses themselves. So I don't, but optically, and also, as you said, they've got the school year starting really soon. There's a lot on. They need to settle in. I don't think that's a huge priority, but I do think that we will see, or we'll potentially hear rumblings of smaller get-togethers with the king and queen.
It's also not a million miles away from Highgrove, so it's easier to pop in and see Pa when the king is staying at Highgrove as well. So there's lots of advantages to that area, if indeed it is the Cotswolds, because Harry's team certainly aren't confirming any of that. I mean, I agree with you. I don't think there's going to be a massive family reunion, but it does mean that you can have some small get-togethers. Obviously, the Spencers as well. There's
yes, they're a huge
Charles
part of the
Spencer
story. Yes,
and Diana's sisters as well. So they're a big part of the story, and another reason for coming back. And we saw that beautiful picture, didn't we, of Lilibet on Meghan's Instagram, sort of at Althorpe, going off, we think, to lay flowers at her at Harry's mother's grave, at Diana's grave. Yes. So, I mean, I just think from a family point of view, certainly in terms of Harry's family, it's an opportunity, isn't it, to reconnect, to rebuild bridges. Perhaps the William Bridge is one too far, and they're not going to sort of make very much progress on that anytime soon. But it's an opportunity to build some bridges.
I think I'm glad you raised the Spencers too, because I have made a point of that when we've been talking about this over the last week, because that has been raised to me so many times. Has been, obviously we have the focus for obvious reasons on William and the King and how their relationships with Harry are. But the Spencers are a massive part of why Harry wants to spend more time here. He's very close with them, but he wants to be there. Well, as we saw last month, he took the kids there, but reconnecting with them and having his kids part of that network is very important to him. So I think exactly as you say, that he'll be focusing on the relationships that exist currently. And I think right now is probably not the time for the other reparations.
Some bridges are very difficult to build.
Focus on that later, maybe.
Easier. Yeah. Interestingly, and I know that a few eyebrows were raised because I imagine that Buckingham Palace were told. In fact, I know they were told in advance of Harry and Meghan's arrival into the UK on Wednesday. And yet that was the same day that Buckingham Palace chose to say, oh, by the way, the King and Queen are off on a tour to the Caribbean and they're going to go to the Commonwealth Heads of Government Summit, plus the King's doing this and the Queen's doing that next week. We get these notes that get issued by the Palace. That's very routine. I say this as a factual point. 3 of those arrived on the same day that Harry and Meghan arrived in the UK. So let's dig into one of those. Autumn tour, which the King and Queen always do a tour in autumn. We've always known that the Commonwealth Heads of Government Summit, which happens once every 2 years, is going to take place in Antigua this year. So they've tacked on a couple of extra countries for the King to do some touring, sort of. And again, I think you were saying before we started recording, 8 days is quite a lot for a man, in his condition and in his late 70s. But so Antigua for CHOGM, as the acronym goes, Commonwealth Heads of Government Meeting, plus Bahamas and Guyana as well on the sort of South American mainland.
I think, exactly as you say. So 8 days. I was quite pleased to see it was 8 days, mostly because, we were told completely or otherwise this has been shot down repeatedly. But when Harry made this abrupt announcement to move back to the UK, a lot of people were concerned that perhaps it had something to do with the King's health. Now, that's something that has been completely disputed by everyone. But the fact he's doing an 8-day tour, I think is great.
Here's an interesting point. The first time that a very senior member of the royal family has been to the Caribbean since William and Kate went to the Caribbean. And that tour didn't go quite so well.
It wasn't great.
Belize first, then they went to Jamaica and they had all sorts of incidents there, and then they also went to the Bahamas as well. That was a very tricky tour for William and Kate, and they were accused of being out of touch. They were accused of doing things that lived in a different era. I think that obviously the Palace are going to be well aware of what happened when William and Kate went there, and they'll have to be very, very careful that the King acknowledges all the the past, the history, the pain, and the King is very good at that, and he's done it before as well, which I think is the key point. So that is something I've no doubt at all is going into the planning in some great detail. Because, Antigua itself have said, we quite fancy a referendum at some point on no longer being a Commonwealth realm.
I think the King has handled this very well. It is, as you say, such a delicate issue when they're visiting these places and these conversations are ongoing. Yes, that trip, and I, to be honest, I do feel very bad for William and Kate from that trip, because some of the issues that were kicked up were just optically... the fence, it was really unfortunate.
I always say that fence photograph was just a moment when they were called over by some excited people, and then seconds later they were doing a normal walkabout, no fence at all, just in the street outside.
The baseball field, right, where there are fences.
You never see that photograph.
Yes.
I think,
So I felt really bad for them with that. But to the broader point, yes, I think that key lessons were learned.
Yes.
Had to have been. Because that was PR-wise quite a disaster.
And then there was that Land Rover, being on the back of the Land Rover in your sort of like white colonial uniform. I mean, again, to put some context on this whole thing, it was the Jamaican Defence Force who said to William and Kate, will you please honour us with doing what the late Queen did when she came here all those years ago? And they said, of course we will. And then not realising what quite that would look like in this era, you know, post Black Lives Matter, post COVID, it just all looked very different.
But yes, I think it would be. I mean, it's great that he's doing the trip. As you said, I think he meets the moment really well in these countries and having these conversations. And I'll be really interested to see how he does this one. And I think that was a key turning point for the royals in terms of in the modern era how these royal tours fit, how they look. And I think it'll be very interesting to watch this next one.
It's going to be fascinating, isn't it? A fascinating few months. And I think you were saying earlier, now Harry and Meghan are here. I mean, Harry and Meghan have always been a story. They've never not been a story in the 6 years since they left the royal family, and yet now they're back in the UK, and we're still trying to come to terms with that. But it kind of does map out a particular news cycle, doesn't it, over the next 12 months or so?
I feel like we are in a completely different royal era now because, again, I'm still processing it. It is such a shock. But
remember the Sandringham summit? The late Queen was very certain, no half in, half out, not having that, and we're told that the King will uphold that. So whatever they do, they can't be half in the royal family, half out. But they're going to have their own kind of royal court.
Yes, the optics of it.
I'm
glad you raised that half in, half out thing too, because I think that's a conversation. I think people are getting very worked up into the idea of, you know, they're going to be, you know, half in the royal family, and that's like the working royal side of it. I don't think there's any appetite from them. I mean, I've never heard of any appetite from either of them, particularly Meghan. Going back to acting, to me, signals a very strong line in the sand, saying I'm not trying to edge back to royal duties.
And I don't. There's no way.
There's no way.
No way in the world Meghan would want to go back.
It would never happen. People would never stand for it anyway. But her returning to acting to me is an absolute defining moment of saying there is no way back to this.
Right. So you can now sort of, I'm just going to say, put your pen down, but probably like stop typing as frantically as you have been over the past week. You kind of just lay back in bed now and rest for a bit.
No, whenever you say that, something really big happens.
But it's been quite the week, isn't it? And well done, and congratulations on the part that you played in it. And thank you very much for standing in a wonderful way this week and bringing us all your insight. It's been really, really great.
Thanks for having me.
We are done for now. We're back with a new episode next week. I don't know who's on the cast list for that one, but make sure you join us for that. Don't forget to hit the bell button to subscribe so you never miss an episode of Talking Royals, and make sure you leave us a comment or a question. I'm sure on this subject you're going to have many of them. But for now, bye-bye.